Hi everybody. In the last video we went through preparing the sketch for this exercise, and today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the painting of it, and I'm going to try to point out some important things about technique as well as materials as you watch me complete this activity. One of the first things you'll notice is that I've taped down my painting to the surface of the table, which I've also covered with craft paper to protect from spills and stains and anything. The reason it's taped down is because acrylic paint on paper, which is what I'm using, will warp the paper a little bit. The moisture in the paint will make the paper buckle and warp a little bit, and if it's taped down, that'll prevent that as much as possible. If you're using a canvas, you don't have to worry about this as much because the canvas is designed to accept acrylic paint without any problems, and you don't need to worry about taping it down at all. Now the first thing I'm doing here in this painting is I'm taking the blue paint. I've chosen blue, yellow, green, and green as my three colors. You're going to have to choose a primary color, a secondary color, and an intermediate color to be the three colors in your color scheme. So I'm taking the blue paint and I'm trying to fill in the spaces between that first set of organic shapes. For this part of the painting, I'm using a flat brush. Over the course of the whole painting, you'll see that I switch between a flat brush and a round brush when I need to get into some smaller areas. The round brush isn't completely round. The bristles usually come to a point to allow it to get you into some smaller areas when you need a little bit more precision. You'll also see that I turn the angle of the brush when I need to approach an edge or when I need to get into a smaller area. I put a second coat of blue on the painting for coverage because I noticed that I could see through some areas a little, so I waited for it to dry, and then I put a second coat of blue on there, and now I'm preparing the palette for some color mixing. I'll be mixing small brushfuls of blue into the yellow paint to achieve the yellow-green I'm going for. Remember, always add little bits of the darker paint into the lighter paint when you're mixing two colors. Once you have your color ready for the next step, what we're looking at is the space between that second group of organic shapes that we drew. It might be helpful to think about this like a web. Like that first group of organic shapes that we drew, the space between them created a web, and we're kind of seeing through that web to another layer of kind of a web that's created by the negative space in that second group of organic shapes. Okay, well, it made sense to me anyway. And because I know I'll probably need a second coat of this paint, I'm just going through this first layer and painting in that yellow-green, and then I'm going to move on to shading in this next layer. And what I'm trying to do here is add a shade of yellow-green, right? I'm mixing a little bit of black into my yellow-green, and I'm adding some darkness, some shade, to the parts of that yellow-green paint that come right up to the edges of the organic shape that I first drew. So you can see I'm applying a darker yellow-green, right, the shade of yellow-green, at areas that go right up against that blue to create a shadow. In order to make it blend nicely, I'm also going to be placing and applying some yellow-green paint right next to it, and then if they're both wet, they should blend with no problem. An issue you might run into, and I did as well a couple times, is that your paint might dry a little too quickly for blending, and you might have to kind of do that whole process over again. Put the wet paint down, get the lighter paint next to it, and allow them to blend while they're wet. If you wait a little too long, you won't be able to blend them all. You'll see it layer on top, but you won't see it do any fading or blending. Then remember, as you're watching, the colors that I chose, the blue, the yellow-green, and the green you'll see in a bit, they are not the colors that you have to choose. You have to choose one primary color, and yours can be either red, blue, or yellow, and it doesn't have to be the top layer. It could be the second layer, or it could be the third layer. It's up to you where you put the colors and which colors you choose, but you will have to have one primary color, one secondary color, and mine will be green here, and one intermediate color, and mine was a yellow-green. Hopefully by now you're starting to see that web effect that I was describing earlier. Hopefully you can start to see that take shape here. What you see me doing here is filling in the remaining space with my green, that's the secondary color I've chosen, and also I'm trying to lighten a little bit, create a tint of my color in the center of these spaces. So you see me apply a little bit of white paint directly to the green paint. While they're both wet, they will blend nicely. So we've got to make sure we're working kind of quickly here to make sure those paints will blend like we want them to. And if we are just leaving the centers of these shapes light and allowing the edges to still be dark, what you will notice is another kind of shadow effect of that second layer of the web, casting a shadow on what would be like the background, the green of the background here. Now I'll stop talking for a little while as you watch me finish up the last parts of this painting. Once your painting is done and dry, you can remove the tape if you had it taped down. Just make sure you're peeling away from the painting like you see me doing here to minimize any ripping. If you pull it straight down or pull it towards the middle of the painting, you will see some ripping, and we don't want that. And that's it. There you have it. Thanks for watching.